الله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلوات وأتم التسليم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, hosted by Yayasan Ta'aleem. Jazakumullah khair for all the preparations and all the efforts that were put to make this as a success. This is one of the few events that I start on time, and I must say I give it to the brothers and sisters of the center that made everything so easy, alhamdulillah, and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and last. So my name is Ammar. I will introduce myself in a short while, but I would like to share something really quickly. Let me turn this on. So this is the link that you can use on your phone to submit questions. You can submit questions at any time throughout the talk. You can do it online. Just put this on your browser, on your phone, and then you can choose, after you write down the question, you can choose if you want to be anonymous or if you want to to say who you are. It's your choice. And you can submit the questions anonymously as well, so that's really up to you. You will see these logos all over the place. We're using these for different times, and I'll explain that shortly, inshallah. So this is just some stuff that we put in every slide. This is about Iman and depression today. Someone might think that this is tamthil, is not nice. But I picked one that has a line across the head, so it's really not seriously that tamthil if you follow that opinion, and the same thing for the guy. But sometimes depression is just that huge that we have to drag around, and I'll talk more about that. And sometimes Iman is just floating around. We don't know really how they relate. And inshallah in the talk today, I'll be talking about Iman and depression, and inshallah we learn something new together. As I am introducing myself, I would like to invite you all to scan this code. If you have a bar scanner or on your phone, you can take an anonymous happiness check. It's a quick, I think 8 or 10 questions that I can, inshallah, by the end of the talk, I can share the results. Again, you can submit this anonymously. And if you cannot get close, if this is not close enough, you can come and step closer to the screen and get it scanned. So I'll talk about myself and I'll introduce myself as you guys are submitting your result or your answers to this quick check. Again, my name is Ammar. My last name is Abu Zahra. I am a Muslim. So that's what I like to always identify myself as. And it's interesting, I get a lot, where are you from? I'm a Muslim, but anyway, so I get the questions. So I'm from America. My wife and I and the family, we came from America about 12 years ago. My parents are from Palestine. I've never been there. My ancestors are from Palestine. My great ancestors are from the Arabian Peninsula. So I don't even know what that is. So I lived my life in the United States. We came from San Diego, California. We've been in Malaysia for 12 years. Yeah. So saya boleh cakap Melayu sikit-sikit. I only know how to order food. That's about it. I just want to make sure I get my food right. So, and a little bit of conversations here and there. But I cannot carry a conversation altogether in Malay. My career started as an engineer. So I was a design engineer. I designed computers, motherboards. And if you go online and you check out Facebook or Yahoo or Google, those are the computers that I was working on. They're called servers. So we designed motherboards, and I was an engineer, electronic engineer. Then I continued my career and I got into project management, and I got into my master's. First master's was in wireless communication. So I was in engineering for quite some time, and then I started to go up the corporate ladder in the management field. My boss one day, he told me, he said, as we grow and develop our knowledge as engineers, we hit a roof at one point, and then we need to decide whether we want to continue with engineering or we want to go with something else. And he asked me that, do you want to eat honey or do you want to make honey?
And I said, no, I'd like to eat honey. He said, maybe you want to consider management. Because engineers, what we do, we make stuff, right? We make the honey that managers enjoy. So, well, not necessarily enjoy, but it's a metaphor. So I started my career into management from that point on. As I grew into the management corporate ladder, I learned a lot about humans. I learned about how to help my team, because in the US, it's not like you're a manager because you want people to call you a boss and they do things for you. In the US, we have the manager really is there to help the team and to develop them. If I am, as a manager, did not develop my team, I failed as a manager. Because management in the United States, we see it as a leadership position. So therefore, the people around you or the people with you, they need to grow as you are growing. So I learned a lot about what motivates people, what makes them happy, what brings pleasure for them, what, most importantly, impacts their performance at work. And the focus was mainly around what works around work. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things that had nothing to do with engineering. So my brain, you can think of it, it kind of like spun like a quarter, like 90 degrees. Until later on, I grew into my career, and then I came here, and at one point became as a director of multiple regions around here, and they couldn't afford me anymore. The company had to let go the expats, and I was one of the people that let go. And I decided at that point, I said, I really enjoy helping people, and I want to focus on that. So I did my second master's into counseling, so I did professional counseling, and this has been my career for the last 5 years. I did coaching, and then I did counseling. So now the next 90 degrees, so you can say my brain is now spun, from being an engineer until now, it's spun 180 degrees. So I see things totally different from what I saw before, like 20 plus years ago. It's a very enrichment for me, and it was a a wonderful journey to learn all that stuff. And inshallah today I would like to share some of that information with you, so we can all learn this about the human being and what really impacts us, and how does that relate really to our belief and our belief system, and us as Muslims especially. So hopefully everybody got a chance to do the happiness check, and maybe we do this later. I'll come back to this one later. This is a thoughts check. So this is about how positive our thoughts are. So this is another one. Maybe you're gonna take a picture of it and take it later, and we take a little break. So this is another thing that we can also show how positive our thoughts are. And I share this with you, and I want to get feedback, is really to show you how powerful these tools are that we have at Relationary, and we help people in their well-being. So try to take a photo of it, and maybe you can submit the form later on, inshallah, because I'm going to start to talk about, start the talk. I can tell you a little bit more about the three logos earlier. You saw IPC, which is International Parenting Consortium. You saw Relationary, and then you saw WORD, W-O-R-D. WORD is the NGO that everybody generously donated today for today's talk. You give the 50 ringgit to come here, and maybe if you came at the last minute, you paid a little more. But there's an NGO that is focusing on doing a little research on the well-being and how we can help people improve their well-being. We do research, and we do other things with that. In IPC, we focus on awareness. So these kind of talks, it's really driven and managed by IPC. And in Relationary, what we do is that we give treatment for people who need help, who need assistance in taking care of their well-beings and so forth. So for example, if you think about it, Relationary is a reactive to a problem that we have today. If anybody has a problem that is related to their well-being, Relationary is the place to go. IPC is more proactive. We teach people skills about parenting, about how to take care of themselves, how to have a lovely marriage, or to develop a healthy person, a healthy well-being inside you. That's what IPC does. And in WORD, which stands for Well-Being for Research and Development Organization. It's a registered NGO. It's a register of society here. We have a committee that we work together on that. In WORD is really the research and what we find, what we might expect in the future to be ready to feed to people in IPC and to help people today with relationary. So this is why we have these three separated in that sense, for that reason. So let's go ahead and start. So this is the question. If you missed it, I mean, you always find it here, inshallah. But if you want to scan it, that's the scan for your questions. So first, about your donations of 50 ringgit. So we split it in 30% and 70%. 30% of it is going to go to fund research and to spread awareness. So some of the money will go to those who are not able to pay for, to attend that class or to attend that training. We will help sponsor them. So we can sponsor these people from your money, really. And if you have more than 50 ringgit, I will not shy away to tell you, don't give it to me. No, give it to me, but it's actually not to me, it's for the NGO. So donate as much as possible, because this is going back to the community. So the 30% is gonna go for funding research, and another one is to spread awareness, and the 70% is gonna go to subsidizing therapy for those who want therapy but not able to pay for it. So we help them for it, whether they come with us or not. We will help them and subsidize that, and also subsidize the assessments, to take some kind of assessments that would help them in their therapy and in their treatment. So why do we talk about depression? It is so important because it is the source of human misery. Depression is one of the sources of us feeling miserable in our lives. So this is important to talk about it. It's incredibly pervasive. It is absolutely crippling, to the point that people are not even moving because of that. They just sit at home and do nothing. It's crippling not just from a physical point of view, but also from a psychological and thinking point of view. They're not as quote-unquote smart as they used to be. They're not as fast thinkers as they used to be. And it's crippling in that way. And it's widely common. It's devastating to the people who are experiencing depression, and also for those who are around those who are experiencing depression. They also get impacted from that person. They don't know what's going on with that person. 15% of us today, according to statistics, that 15% of us today, one way or another, they will experience depression in their lives. So it is quite serious, and I'm talking about MD. MD is major depression, not an easy depression, but a serious depression, and I'll be talking more about that. What does that mean? So according to the World Health Organization, depression is number 4 cause of disability in the world. What does that mean? Means it's the 4th reason why people don't do anything. They just sit at home. They don't go out. They don't go to work. They quit their job. They quit their family. They get divorced. They just separate themselves from everybody else. It's the disability that causes a lot of breakup in the family and in the society. And it is expected to be number 2 in 2025. This is serious stuff. And how come we're not talking about it? And that's why may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the brothers and sisters who are here in this. And when I talked to them about it, they were really excited to share this kind of information with you. And I'm really happy, and I'm very proud of you, for all of you coming for these kind of talks. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help me to convey the knowledge, and inshallah may it be helpful for you and your family. So the scope of the talk, I'll be introducing the 2 topics, as I mentioned earlier, Iman and depression. They are totally different from each other, and at the end I will tie them together, and I'll put a connection between that. So the main objective for today is to help explain the relationship between the 2 topics. Even though they're so different, yet there's some relationship between them. So the 2 topics, you have Iman and you have depression. Today in Iman, in terms of Iman, I'm not going to give you a lecture about Iman, but I'm just going to shed a little bit of light, because this is the place where we all learn, and we go to these kind of classes to learn about Iman. So I will just give a scholarly review about Iman, and an example in our daily life. And in terms of depression, I'll be talking about a psychological point of view from depression, and a biological point of view for depression. So So that's really the structure for today. And at the end, I will be tying everything together, inshallah. So bear with me. One of the things that I learned when we, I mentioned earlier about my career into corporate world, but I also, alhamdulillah, had many opportunities to learn from great scholars in the world, especially mainly in the United States, Sheikh Salah Sawi and many of them. And they taught me is when it comes down to learning, we need to be patient. We cannot wait for the answer in the beginning. We need to wait. And the lecture goes on, and then a second lecture, and then till after maybe the fourth, fifth lecture is like, oh, I get it now. This is what it's meant. So we need to be patient as we are learning new stuff, especially when it's new. So inshallah, I will start with the baby steps today, inshallah. So Iman, a scholarly review. So I'll talk about the definition of Iman. I will not talk about the pillars of Iman. We all know the pillars of Iman. The characteristics of Iman, levels of Deen, the foundations of Iman, what strengthens Iman, what weakens it. That's a lot, right? Yeah, but I'm going to go through it really fast because most of us, if not all, already know that. So I'm going to skim through it really quickly because I'm going to link that with depression somehow, inshallah. Okay? Definition of Iman. What is it? Is to express it. So we have Iman, we need to express it verbally, we need to express it internally within our hearts, we need to express it also using our limbs. So everything that we implement in our lives, it needs to reflect that Iman that we have in our hearts that we spoke, right? And the characteristics of Iman. Anybody can suggest or think of what are the characteristics of Iman? It's a hadith, we all know it. It increases and it decreases. These are characteristics of Iman. It can increase and it can decrease. Right? This is characteristic. So another characteristic that we don't talk a lot about, but it's actually embedded and it's part of that, it's that it gets influenced. It's influenced from an external part. We don't talk a lot about that in Iman courses and stuff, but I want to talk about this here, that Iman, the fact that it increases and decreases, not just by itself. Something happens that causes that change. So what is that causes, what does influence our Iman? Well, if we to think about ourselves being, being the circle, and in IPC, in relationary, we use black circle, because we believe, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Adam is black. He was created from black clay. So we use that as our symbol to represent the human being. So if this is who we are and this is our Iman today is inside us, what could be happening that is influencing it? Well, it's the past, where the experiences that we had before, the parents, the growing pains and through the teenage years or the younger years in the adolescence time. Circumstances, maybe we had a difficulty that is related to financial difficulties or difficulties in school. All these things, and most commonly, is culture. So all of these things do, and many others as well, but I'm just summarizing it in these, it does impact or has some kind of influence that influences our Iman. It causes it to increase, it causes it to decrease. I can say also parents, also friends, right? Friends in the past, friends in the future, friends in today, that somehow, somewhere in our lifespan, it impacted us and how we saw things and how we interpreted. And guess what? This is going to impact us, is going to influence us, and therefore we will also influence other people. We might influence our friends, we might influence our spouses, and we might influence our children, right? So this is an ongoing and influential cycle. So if we are who we are today is because of our past, because of what our parents taught us, or what we learned in school, or what we learned in these kind of classes that we come to Yayasan Ta'lim and other universities and other institutes. That's who we are. So therefore, whatever we put inside us is going to impact and influence us and our Iman. And therefore, we will also influence others. So the levels of Deen, the general Deen, what's the general Deen? That we're all human. There's a humanistic Deen that all of us as creation, as a human, we go by, whether we're Muslims or not. Now, if you were to define that a little more, then there is Islam. That's the Deen. Islam is specific to certain people. So that's a small group from the human being. So this is more specific. So that's the second level. The third level is Iman with Islam, right? Because some Christians or Jews or atheists, they would say, I'm a believer. Well, I don't know about atheists. They wouldn't say that. So they wouldn't go that far. The Christians and the Jews, they would say, I'm a believer. But if they don't have Islam, we cannot include them in that circle or that specific people of being a mu'min. So a mu'min, you need to have an Islam that's even a smaller group, it's more specific. And the most specific and the highest level of deen is ihsan, right? So that's the most specific Muslims with Iman that have ihsan. These are the few of the few of the few, right? So these are the levels of deen. What's the foundation of Iman? Well, the first thing we need to disbelieve in everything that transgresses its boundaries. We need to disbelieve that in anything that transgresses its boundaries. What does that mean? For example, somebody decides want to worship a tree. It's like, the tree is a god. But the concept of God creates and sustains. Creating and sustaining is beyond the boundaries of a tree. So we need to have disbelief in that. We need to believe in the tree because it is expected to go beyond the boundaries that the tree was created for. And the same thing for some of the Christians believe in Jesus. Jesus is a human being. He cannot create. He cannot sustain. He's only a human being. He cannot live without food. So therefore, believing him as a God is going beyond the boundaries he was created for. So therefore, we disbelieve in that. So that's the foundation. That's in Arabic called taghut. Taghut is anything that transgresses beyond its boundaries, right? That's the general concept. So we need to disbelieve in taghut and anything that belongs to it. Believing in the unseen. Believe in the unseen. So that's part of the belief. So one story when one person was saying there's no God, and therefore because I cannot see God, it doesn't exist. So the other guy was sitting next to him. He said, you know what? You have no brain. I don't see your brains. I'm going to go get my gun, shoot you in the head, so I can see if you have a brain in that skull or not. He's like, okay, I get your point. But it's different. They're always, when you corner them with a logical answer, they're like, no, but it's different when it comes down to God. No, it's not different. We need to believe. That's what Iman is all about. And also part of the foundation of Iman, obedience and avoidance. Some children learn that avoidance is a burden. They don't believe or they not learn that avoidance is actually a worship. It's just as making salah and making dua. Sincerity to Allah in worships. These are all the foundations of Iman. So what strengthens Iman? All the stuff we know. Knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing His names and attributes, contemplating, reflecting, being mindful about when we recite the Quran, knowing in the messenger of Allah Muhammad, peace be upon him, salam, contemplating and reflecting about being mindful of Allah's creations. When was the last time we had a walk at night and looked at the sky? Just like, and just see the stars, see the moon, and just look, Ya Allah, subhanallah, this is a beautiful scenery. I've never, just see how small we are compared to that creation, right? And maybe you get interrupted with a cloud. It's really easy to get clouds here. But again, you can think of how small we are to that cloud. Think of how heavy that cloud is. That cloud is carrying water. I mean, just contemplating about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Says the creations of the heavens and the earth is greater than the creation of man. But we hardly focus on that. Our focus is like, me, him, her, this, that. But if we were to look up, that increases our Iman. Another thing is to continuously mention and being mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Knowing the goodness of deen. Many children, they do things because we have to. No, but we need to teach the children and teach ourselves what is good about our deen. What is so good about following the sunnah? What's so good about it? Oh, because we have to. That's because we are Muslim, we do this. The child feels that it's a burden. It's not really something that they can feel positive about. They think of it as a negative thing. It's like, oh, so if you don't do it, you go to hell. That's why you do it. It's like, Where is hell? I don't know what you're talking about. So there's a lot of things that, so it's not driven from love. It's not driven from knowing, from knowledge, but it's driven from different, again, things that we carried from our parents and we carry it on, and they carried it from their parents and we carry it on, and so on and so forth. So this is the inherited gene about how we see and interpret things. And that can very likely impact how we view Iman. Another thing is to increase our Iman, investigate to get upgraded. To get upgraded in your Iman. I mean, we upgrade our phones regularly. We upgrade our cars, our furniture at home, right? We upgrade the plans that are on our phones. We upgrade that. But when was the last time we invested? It's like, how can I upgrade my Iman? How is that? What do you upgrade your Iman to be what? To have ihsan. So that's another thing that we can invest in. How do I get upgraded? How do I upgrade my Iman to the next level? What weakens Iman? What weakens Iman is the total opposite of what I mentioned earlier. Not doing what I mentioned earlier weakens Iman. We all know that. I have a strong belief that we all know that. Excuse me. So if we're talking about increase and decrease, well then what removes it? What nullifies it? What takes it out? Well, we all know shirk, kufr, hypocrisy, leaving part or all of Islam. That removes it. Somebody's like, oh, he's not praying. Oh, his Iman is weak. No, if he's not praying, he missed Islam. Prayer is part of Islam, so he missed part of Islam, so therefore he's not a mu'min. He's hardly a Muslim, right? So that's just the definition here. We'll talk more about this. There's a reason why I'm mentioning all that, so bear with me, inshallah. So, and another reason that would nullify Iman is causing corruption, obeying and pleasing the disbelievers, or and the wicked people in the world, and not being pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All those are the ones that nullifies and destroys Iman. So what brings back Iman? What revives Iman? Tawbah. We do all these bad things, our Iman goes low or maybe disappears, but Tawbah brings it up. It's a very powerful thing that hardly talk about. Tawbah is very, very important in our lives. The concept of Tawbah is very important. But there are also some struggles with Tawbah. Someone commits all the, maybe a magician, right? I mean, that's kufr, right? That's an act of kufr. It gets you out of Islam. So, and then they make Tawbah. But they're not happy. What's going on? And somebody would tell them, oh, you need to work in your Iman. Your Iman is still weak. How do you know? Did you open his heart and looked inside his heart and see how his Iman was? But these are the real things I'm talking about. These are real things that we, or ones we love and the ones we care about, they have experienced it. But then we're easy to judge. Oh, you're not this, or you're not doing that, or you need to make more dua or that. We'll talk more about that, inshallah. So this is a little story about our daily lives. There's how we manage with Iman. The story is a fictional story. I made it up. I was thinking, how do I present some of the things that we experience? But at the same time, I don't want to get too personal, and I just wanted to try to be as vague as possible. So I thought of this story of a doe deer, a type of deer, lives in a Siberian desert. His name is Rudy. It's like Rudy and roe deer, kind of, anyway. So Rudy, it's a roe deer that lives in the mountain. He lived happy with his family in the Siberian mountains. He loved, enjoying and having pleasure and eating grass and watching beautiful mountains and the waterfalls, and when the big waterfalls throw and you see this mist of the water causes to see the rainbow across the waterfall. It's beautiful scenery. He just enjoyed it. He had a passion for lion's life. He just loved lions. And he just, something about lions that he really felt it was fascinating. He was so fascinated about their teeth. They had big teeth and they're clean. And he wondered, how do they clean them? And he was just so curious about the lions. Why are we supposed to stay away from them? I mean, there's some soft side of the lions or something. So he had so conflicted passions. He had passion for dentistry as well. So he liked teeth. He wanted to take care of the teeth of the deers and the gazelles, and he had this fascination about the lions, and he didn't know what to do. Should I go dentistry or should I go study the life of the lions? So he was continuously struggling out of his comfort zone, and he always prayed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide him, to help him to find where he should spend the rest of his life and grow. So he wanted the feel of fulfillment that he had. He wanted to have that meaning in his life. So he wanted to have that, enjoy his passion and be part of his life. And one day, he found the dentistry book of Ibn Sina. And he saw how Ibn Sina came up and discovered how to treat teeth and how to clean them. And if you have a bad tooth or a cavity inside it, Ibn Sina in his book, he explained how to take out the cavity and how to fill it up with herbs and a mixture. And he just loved it. He just thought, oh, this is beautiful. This is the answers of my prayers. I'll just do dentistry. I'll just focus on that. So he read the book. He learned everything about it. He learned it very well. After some time, he decided to become a dentist for lions. He wanted to combine both passions. He said, you know what, I'm just going to go with that. His family and friends, they thought this is totally nonsense. But for him, he felt like this is going to give him a deeper meaning in his life. It's a deeper meaning than just sticking around with eating grass and enjoying mountain views. So he also felt secured, that he felt his prayers were answered when he found this book as a sign of sincerity, a sign of acceptance of my prayers. And his family said, oh, you're totally nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. You want to go walk with lions? I mean, let alone to walk with lions, you want them to open their mouth and you're going to put your head inside them? Are you kidding me? I mean, it just didn't make sense. So he felt rejected. He felt detached, disappointed. I was like, how come my family is not supporting me in this? I really love this. I want to help the lion's teeth to get him clean. So this made him feel torn. Should I follow my passion and live this normal life and eat grass and enjoy the mountains view just to make my parents happy? Or should I lead with my passion and live this abnormal life and go help the lions to get cleaner teeth? And he had that, and he had also other challenges. So those are the challenges externally, but inside him, he had this fear also. He said, if I were to get, to learn dentistry, if I get closer to a dentist, he might go after me and kill me. Maybe he'll have me for dinner. And if I were to ask for a lion to help me to practice on him or her, they might also kill me. So it's like, can I get any closer to my passions without being threatened with my life? And he also remembers his dad told him, stay away from the lions. And his mom is like, don't be getting close to those lions. You see those lions, you gotta run away. And he also told himself, I know I'm supposed to hate lions, but there's something about them. Something is just so mysterious. I don't know what it is, but I just wanted to get there and help them. Until one day a storm hit the town, and he was separated from the family and the herd with a blizzard, and he was drifted away from the town, and he didn't fear humans, so he got shelter. He went shelter in a building, and that building turned out to be the Siberian State Medical University. So he took shelter in that building. He didn't know. He had no idea. And then he, a separation from the family. He's all alone. He now wants to be a dentist more than ever. He just wants to be a dentist for lions. He felt like this is a test. Am I really gonna stick to my passion, or am I gonna just change it just because of a blizzard? Now he is even more determined to continue with his passion, and this need to change for himself, to adapt to the new life that he has. No family, no herd, no one around him. It really forces Rudy to react, to deal with this new circumstances, right? And this is going to help him to grow, and it's going to help him to change. We go through this almost every day. So he noticed the building had, they teach dentistry there, so he had this way to sneak in and look through glass or look cracks in the wall just to watch how they use the tools. He used his passion to do the impossible. He learned how to have these hooves of his, to hold these little tools, and he spent so much time determined to figure out how to use these tools. So he had a lot of challenges, but he was able to overcome those challenges as they came. And he'd done the imaginable. He couldn't believe that he's going through all of that and he's learning it. One day, he sees a lion. The lion is named Osama. By the way, Osama in Arabic means lion. It's another name for lion, right? So Osama, Qatanfar, Asad, all these are names for lion. So he found a small lion called Osama. And when Rudy saw Osama, he ran away. He's like, okay, I need to run for safety. And he ran away, and then he realized that Osama was in serious pain, by the way. And then he realized that Osama is not running after him. Actually, Osama's sitting back and he's just not moving. And then he realized that, that's really weird. A lion would run after a deer. Then maybe, and then he noticed that Osama couldn't move his jaw. So Osama was like, he couldn't even roar, so he was in a lot of pain. And then Rudy said, aha, that lion must be having toothache. So he went, and he was very excited to go find help for him. And then he went, and then he realized, you know what? I've been learning all the dentistry stuff. I'll do it. I'll go help him. So he went and helped the lion to fix his tooth. And he was successful. The lion was happy. Osama was happy, and he wanted to take Rudy to his family to reward him. It's like, well, I need to, I want to see this wonderful skills that you have, this wonderful, beautiful ability. You can help us all in the pride. And as he's getting closer to the pride, where Osama's family lived, Rudy got attacked by many lions. They went after him. Many lions went after Rudy, and Osama desperately tried to save Rudy. Eventually, Rudy got away. So Rudy is safe. And then Rudy he saw this incident of the whole thing. He saw this as a wake-up call. So he started looking for his family, found his family. He's like, you know what? He was very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for saving his life. He was grateful for Allah. And he learned that maybe the best way is to go back and stay with the herd. I don't need to be so adventurous and help the lions. Maybe I'll just help the teeth of the deers here and there. And he just made tawbah, not to endanger his life ever again. Right? So this is how he lived. And then on the other side, Osama, the lion, learned that Allah's help can come from anywhere. A deer helping him with his tooth. See, the same incident, the deer, Rudy, thought it was dangerous, but for Osama it was so rewardful and was very meaningful to him. It was like, oh wow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us help from from ways that we never thought of. I mean, who would have thought of a deer come and help me with my tooth? But on the other hand, Rudy, many years later, he's not happy. He is down. He's low. He's feeling low. He's sad. Now, he has his life saved, but he's still sad. He made tawbah. He no longer wants to do that anymore, but he's sad. He's not feeling the same way. He's not enjoying grass. He hardly eats. And he no longer cares about watching mountains and waterfall. The last time he was staring at mountains, actually he wasn't staring at mountains, he wanted to jump off the cliff. He just didn't enjoy his life. And he had a lot of thoughts, regrets, sense of unworthiness, anger at self-disappointment. How could you do this? How could you have done that? Maybe you could have done something different. Maybe you didn't have to go with Osama. There's a lot of these thoughts that are in his mind. You're endangering your life. You didn't listen to your dad. They tried to advise you. All these thoughts are happening with Osama, and he's not happy. He is not happy. So he's demotivated. He thought that this is his identity, to help lions. However, he lost. He's like, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. And then at one point or another, he starts to think that his life has no meaning. So what happened? What happened to Rudy? What's happening to Rudy? What's going on? Very likely, he went into depression. What caused it? We don't know. We don't know. He's just going through depression. So I'm going to just go ahead and take a break now. If you guys want to take a bio break, 5 minutes, and then we can continue, inshallah. I will conclude the story soon after, bi'idhnillah. So it's okay to take 5 minutes bio break. If you want to take this assessment, this is about well-being. It's a bit longer than the others, but it's really good if you're interested to know about your well-being. It also assesses many well-being disorders if you want to do that in a break. Water.
The center director is saying they have some rooms upstairs where we can use for counseling, and then
Okay, Jazakallah. Okay, is there room for counseling?
afterwards.
Yeah,
so
sure.
he said, can you announce that
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
people who want to?
His father advised Rudy. He didn't say.
And
Someone.
He didn't.
Oh, advisor. Oh,
One time
I
he
got
said-
mixed up. Okay, one is not.
So they said if you are agreeable, you can announce that
Sure.
we can meet briefly, like maybe 5 minutes.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
A few
Sounds
minutes
good.
with people who want. Maybe we can stay back an hour or so. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see. Abdurrahman, mashallah, I love you.
Somebody's asking how schizophrenia.
All the shops close by is closed until 12.
KGB.
Where is that?
Next door. We're really
See, this whole line.
No, it's like one block down. Somebody's asking about how schizophrenia related to Iman.
How was your what?
Hold on a second.
Can I help?
No,
Please.
it's her specialty.
Can I also?
Can I?
You never know.
I'm really tight in time right now.
Okay.
So I'm talking about this is an imbalanced chemical, right?
Yeah, this is, you could just say schizophrenia is a different condition.
Yeah.
Sometimes it overlaps with depression.
Yeah.
This kind of thing would best to speak to a professional.
Yeah, but I can just give an answer.
It is a similar like
It's a
depression.
clinical.
Okay, it is verse number 4.
It's just like
It is that
diabetes
verse
and
number
stuff.
5.
Okay.
But the symptoms, like
The symptoms of being possessed. There's not necessarily a jinn inside the person, but we need to talk about that.
you could say like
I
the
didn't mention
symptoms, or like you know what I mean. You just say it causes symptoms that maybe people might think might relate, but it's usually. But I think you just say it's a different clinical condition,
Yeah, yeah.
like depression. So this one you should see the specialist.
It's over there.
Can I get it?
No, I need it.
And then, but so you can announce these are the kind of things that we can meet briefly,
Yes,
maybe 5 minutes with
yes,
people afterwards.
yes,
I
inshallah.
forgot the well-being paper.
I don't know what that is, and for now it's okay.
The free paper they hand out.
That's okay. I have them. I have it in my car. I mean, I have them in my my bag.
Can you?
I can give them to Abdurrahman. تعال حبيبي, I give you some papers. Give it to your mom. So,
Assalamu alaikum. Just one thing I wanted to share with you. These assessments, we usually charge 150 ringgit for each assessment. We're giving it to you for free because you are part of the Yayasan Ta'aleem. So this is one of the things that, so take advantage of it. We will give you, inshallah, a phone call back, or we walk through it with you over the phone. And if you want to do it later, you can also do it later. We have a look for a piece of paper that looks like this. We have it outside. Some of the sisters have it and they can hand it out. Look for it, and it gives you the steps and what you need to do online and how you submit it. There's more pages or papers that the sisters are passing around now. So again, this is free of charge. We usually charge for that 150 for each. Yes, you had.
I cannot take it. So they can see the screens, or they can use the paper.
People here cannot because
They
of
can.
people's heads.
It's okay. They're standing up. They're figuring it out. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Bismillah. So we can start again, inshallah. So, what is one source of depression? What is one source of depression? This idiot. This idiot can be a source of depression. And it's very true. And the other idiot that's sitting in the Kremlin, also another source of depression. Enough of him. So now I'm going to talk about depression, like I mentioned before. I'm going to talk about the from a psychological point of view. So I'm going to talk about depression from psychology point of view. I'm going to try to get moving because you guys got to move. I didn't get to move a lot, but I'll start move a little bit. So we use the word depression a lot, and on our daily basis, we use the word depression in any situation that we face in. Car problems, you get a problem with the car, or you need to change your transmission, you need to change your engine. Oh, it's so depressing, I cannot deal with that. And you start like so sad, and some disappointments that you get maybe from your family members, or from your team at work, or from your boss, or you get bad news, or you feel down and bummed about things that you were expecting in that day to achieve, or to get a new job, or you get an interview, you get disappointed about it, and so forth. So these things that we experience on a daily basis, and we say, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I feel so low, I feel so down. And what do our friends and families tell us? Oh, come on, strengthen your Iman. To boost your Iman up. You need to, that will fix it. Well, we'll find out more about that, inshallah. So there are three types of depressions. Is the everyday depression. It lasts for a day or two, or maybe the same day. You feel depressed and you feel better the next day. Some people will tell you, sleep it off. Sometimes sleeping takes care of that. And then we feel better. The reactive depression goes for a few days, goes beyond 2 days. It lasts for a few days, but not too long. And then we get better. Major depression goes for 2 weeks plus. So if you feel low for 2 weeks, then there's maybe a high possibility that you are experiencing major depression. So this is when we feel flattened. We feel like this is the lowest I felt very sad, and you're not getting any better. It can last for 2 weeks. It can last longer than that. It can last for a few months, actually. So what defines depression? So one way to define it is a biochemical disorder with genetic component mixed with early or current experiences and influences that is making me not to appreciate sunsets. So when we're depressed, the things that we enjoy, we no longer find them pleasurable. We don't enjoy them anymore. And that's and about, with that feeling, not feeling that joy, that pleasure in what we do and what we say and what we hear and what we see, that's a sign of maybe you're experiencing depression. Is it fixable? Is it curable? Yes. Do I need to take medication? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You don't have to. So there's the cure for depression doesn't mean you need to take medication for it, even though there is something like that. But we'll talk more about that. So if you think of a person who has a heart disease, or has cancer, or who has diabetes, or hypertension, these kind of diseases, these are major diseases that cause restrictions in our lives, right? It does impact how we live our lives. And somehow these people, they still find pleasure. So if they're not able to do the things that they used to do, like running or something like that, then they find pleasure by spending time with the families. I know a brother, a very close friend of mine, and a teacher also, that who experienced this the kidney problem, that he got the chance to learn about his family. He said, I never knew my children until I got this illness. So he saw the positiveness about it, and he enjoyed his time with family and friends. Some they developed new hobbies, gardening, crafts, all these things that they can still have pleasures with. Some, like the diabetic person, is like, this is my chance to live a healthy life. So they enjoy that. They enjoy this new life that they have. But depression is simply the inability. I'm sorry?
No.
Yeah, to feel pleasure. How can you cope with that? How can you cope out of that? Because when you have the major diseases that I mentioned, you cope out of it, but you're still having the pleasure. But what if you have this sense of not feeling pleasure? How can you cope with it? And that's the most difficult. What makes depression very difficult to deal with. So it's called anhedonia. So anhedonia is the absence of pleasure. The opposite of that is pleasure. It's called hedonia. If you heard my last talk last weekend, I gave it about pornography. I was talking about hedonia, about the pleasure. And what does pleasure do to us? And here, depression is anhedonia. It's the opposite of that. So I'm going to give you an example of this person, and tell me if is it possible for this person to experience anhedonia? Successful career, beautiful wife, beautiful children. Let's see a show of hands. Is it possible for this person to experience anhedonia? Yes. Anybody would say no. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. How about this person? Is it possible for this person to experience anhedonia? Prays 5 times a day, fast Ramadan, 6 days of Shawwal, the white days, the Mondays and Thursdays, and the Sunnahs, and the Tahajjuds, and the Quran, and they learn about the names of Allah, they learn about everything. Is it possible? I gotta know. Anybody would say no or yes? Yes, I'm hearing a lot of yeses and one no. Very brave of you, brother. Jazakallah khairan. I'm gonna have to disagree with you, but there is a reason for that. Yeah, we'll talk more about it, inshallah. I will talk more about that. I will tell you why it's no. Why it's no is not the answer, I meant to say. Why is it no is not the answer? That it is possible for this person to also experience anhedonia. Okay, well, getting there. I'm getting more people, their eyes are opening a little bit bigger than before. So that's a good thing. We're going in the right direction. Good, alhamdulillah. So what are some of the symptoms of depression? Well, we spoke about anhedonia, lose or loss or degrading feel of pleasure. And if you don't have it at all, that's major depression. Okay? So loss of pleasure it means that you have some kind of depression there. That's a sign. So getting, you don't have to have, absolute inability, but that's the major depression. So reduction or reduce in enjoying pleasurable things. And some people, they don't even enjoy mating with their spouse. That's so like, okay, so what? And then like when you got married, when you first want to get married and the excitement of marriage and the intercourse and all that experience of love and all that is so exciting. But when someone who is getting, loss of pleasure, they're like, I don't know, it's okay. But it's not like they don't like you. It's not like you're not sexy anymore. It's not that you lost it or they lost their love to you. Something going on inside the other person that is not enjoying it anymore. It's not about you. So that's another example of anhedonia. I'm getting mixed looks on the people's faces when I talked about that, but that's okay. Grief, another sign of depression. People experience grief, and that could lead them to depression, or that can stay as grief, but it's actually depression. And they think it's grief. So grief comes from loss. If you lose anything, we grieve. Some people lose their cat, they grieve. Some people lose their car, they grieve. Some people lose their loved ones, they grieve. Right? Loss of career, loss of, like the example of Rudy, loss of meaning of life. And that's what happened with Rudy. He lost a huge part of his life, of his view of his career. Right? His experiences and his passion really drew that future for him. So he lost that future. So loss is grief. So there's dabda. Dabda is a process that we learn in therapy in terms of how to get out of grief. So the theory or the study shows the first day is denial. It's like, no, come on, it's no big deal. I can get my job. I lost my job, that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm not worthy. I can get another job. And then they get angry. How dare they fire me like that? All the years I spent, I put all of my time and extra time I didn't get paid for, and this anger comes in. And then bargaining. You call back the HR. Hey guys, let's make a deal. Let's work it out. Can you get me back in the job? Because I'm not able to find another job there. So there's bargaining there. You're trying to deal with the grief. And they say, no, it's a final decision. Can't do it. And then they get into depression. That's the D. So that's that. This is D for depression. And eventually you come out of it with acceptance. That's the A. So this is, in a normal way, this is what we go through. We can go through dabda in 2 minutes, in 2 days, 2 weeks. That's a problem if we stuck here. Or 2 months or 2 years. It might take us a long time to go through dabda. And sometimes it's badda or adba. It can be anything. You can accept it first and then you deny it later. It can be in any order. Another thing that causes depression is feeling of guilt. Guilt comes from expectations. Our children, they are likely to experience guilt if we put a lot of expectations on them. Self-harming, that's the negative feedback. We give the children, we give ourselves, we give the spouses and the loved ones around us negative feedback, and the more negative feedback we give them, the more they want to punish themselves. So they go into self-harming. There are many, many stories of how people go through self-harming, and it gives them pleasure. It helps them cope with the depression. But this is another form of how it's a symptom that shows that this person maybe is suffering also, or maybe experiencing anhedonia of some type. Psychomotor, everything is exhausting, and also slow thinking. How many times I've heard parents telling their child, "Oh, stop being so lazy. Why you're so lazy? Sit around doing nothing, just sitting in front of the computer, sitting in front of the TV. Go do something." And the child's like, "Well, they're dragging their feet across the room." It's like, "Come on, you're a youth. When I was your age, I was jumping on trees and I was all over the place." And the child is like, "Well, I don't know, I'm just going as fast as I can." And they're like dragging themselves, at home, or when they go to school, they're dragging themselves, they're forcing themselves out. But it's really taking a lot of efforts for them to move. So that's a psychomotor, is a condition that is also caused by depression. Low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is very, very scary. It's scary because it's not easy to find. It's not easy to grab, especially when a parent with a child. The parent says, "Oh, my child is so obedient. He's so obedient, he's just never telling me to do anything, and he never done it. He always done it. Or she always done it. Always listens to me." But that could be because of the low self-esteem. I mean, there are obedient children, there's no maybe doubt about that. But the fact that they never give you a hard time, maybe there's something going on there. Because the number one job of the child is to give hard time for the parents. And if your child is not doing that, then there's something need to be looked at. Maybe something going on there. Okay, so we all experience depression, one way or another. Bad stuff happens to us all the time. We feel lousy, withdrawn, we have sense of grief or guilt. And we don't get pleasure sometimes. When we feel low, it's like, I don't want to go out. Yeah, let's go to your favorite place. Let's go to your favorite restaurants. I don't feel like it. Don't want to go. But this is something we experience. However, we get better. We improve after that. We cope with it. We deal with it. We're able to get out of that. Right? So that happens to all of us. I would say all of us. We one way or another, we experience this, or we saw someone go through it. So when we go through that, us, not major depression, just daily depression. When we go through that, what do we get? What people tell us? "Oh, come on, pull yourself together. Come on, what's the big deal? Figure it out. Get over it. It's not a big deal. Why are you making such a big deal about it? It's not a big deal that they took your car. Inshallah, it's for the sake of Allah, it's okay, brother. Toughen it up. You're a tough guy. You're a tough sister. Your Iman is so strong. I mean, why is it so impacting you so badly?" And this is very common. Strengthen your Iman, brother. You need to have Iman. You need to. How do you know I don't have Iman? That's for me. I feel like it can almost be insulting in a little bit. It's like, how do you know that I don't have strong Iman? It's really something that is quite, for me, it's kind of mind-boggling when people say that. Make dua. How do you know that I didn't make dua? It's a good reminder, Jazakallah khair. But how do you know that I didn't make dua? I tell Allah, I made dua, akhi. I made dua. I stayed last night and every night for the last 3 days, making dua and making tahajjud, reciting Ayatul Kursi, reciting Surah Yasin, right? That's very common in many places. And I still don't feel good. I feel so low. I feel depressed. And I give sadaqah. I give it. Every day I go to this mama store. This guy comes and I always buy from him the napkins and I give him extra money for the napkins he gave. And I give sadaqah. I give all I can. But I still feel low. The fact of the matter is, why we feel low, especially if we have this major depression, if we really feel low for a very long time, 2 weeks time, 2 weeks pass by and you're still not feeling well, and you're still not enjoying things in your life as usual, then there's something happening. And the fact of the matter is, depression is as biological as diabetes. When someone in your family or loved one or friend tell you, you know what, I went to check my blood and the doctor said I'm diabetic. You don't tell him to go strengthen his Iman. We don't tell him to go make dua. What do we tell him? Get your medicine. We make dua for Shafaq-Allah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. How are you handling it? Right? We are connected with the person as if it was us that is experiencing that new findings, his new life. His life is changing, or her life is changing because of that finding. Depression is no different than that. Right? You go out with this friend of yours or family member to, like, I don't know, some of the restaurants that sell cheesecake. Like, come on, stop with this insulin stuff. Come on, you can have a cheesecake. It's a cheesecake. You love cheesecake. I can't take it. We don't do that. We don't tell them, come on, toughen it up. It's just insulin. What's the big deal? We don't say that. We don't say get over it, right? So, depression is the worst disease anyone can get. Why? Why is that? Depression is the worst. I'm sorry?
You can't see it.
You can't? You can't see it.
Like you can
That makes it.
the test.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Like, not like a blood test.
Oh, very good. Yeah, this is something common I tell many of the people I talk to. In therapy, in our centers, there is no X-ray for emotions and for depression. We don't have the assessments. Assessments help us out. And you're right, we don't see it unless we have the right tools. Assessments, for example. What else? It's the worst disease anyone can get. Even after you're diagnosed, it's still the worst disease. Remember what I mentioned earlier? What is depression? The inability to feel pleasure. Just like this. Like Rudy, mountains and waterfalls and the rainbows. It's like, I want to jump off the cliff. I really don't care about all that, right? So it's worse because of that. Coping out of it is not that simple. You can't just turn on. It's not like turning on a light or turning it off a light. It's not something that we can just make it happen, make it disappear. So again, we're talking from a psychological point of view. And this is an introduction. This is the part I'm introducing the biological part. So from a psychological point of view, we see certain behaviors, certain symptoms that is indicating biological problems. That is giving us strong clues that it is related to biology. And some of the clues are symptoms of, they call vegetative symptoms. Vegetative symptoms. What are those symptoms? Trouble sleeping, appetite, stress response. These are all under vegetative symptoms. And there's also something rhythmic patterns. We'll talk more about that. So these two, amongst few, are some of these things that will tell us, yeah, it sounds like it's more than just toughing it up. It's more biological. So when it comes down to sleeping, trouble sleeping, I'm not talking about tossing and turning in your bed. It's not about that. It's about waking up 4 o'clock in the morning, exhausted. You're lying in bed, and you couldn't even stand up and make wudu or make the hajjud, or just standing, just lying down in your bed, and you're not able to go to sleep. Also, another thing about trouble sleeping is that the patterns, you see, when we fall asleep, we follow a specific pattern, specific steps that we need to go through in order for us to get to deep sleep. That pattern is regulated by the brain. Now, those who have trouble sleeping, that pattern is out of whack. It's not following the conventional and the normal pattern that we all have. And who controls that is the brain. So if the brain is not sending the right signals to start the pattern at the right time, we get impacted, we don't get sleep. How do you tell this person to toughen it up? Not able to. So at the relationary, we can detect, and we do have sleep therapy. We have, clinical psychologist is really what can help anybody who has, problems sleeping or trouble sleeping, or they're getting the rest out of sleep. I mean, you may sleeping, but you're not getting the rest. You wake up exhausted. Maybe you wake up at 6 or for Fajr, like 5:30 or something, but you're still, you had your 7-8 hours of sleep, but you wake up exhausted. So that's really, that's a signal that there's something going on, that you might have some vegetative symptoms that we need to look at. And by the way, if you're interested, maybe you want to make time, they're giving us a room upstairs. I think it's upstairs, 4th floor. 4 rooms that we can sit with you if you need some consultation or some counseling or some help on a one-on-one basis. We're 4 of us today, counselor and 3 clinical psychologists that are here from Relationary. So we can help if you want. We can inshallah talk to you about that. If you have any of these symptoms, or if you want to talk about something you wanted to validate it or verify it, more than happy to sit with you after 1 o'clock, right? We're talking until 1, right? Yeah. After 1 o'clock, inshallah, we can go on. So what most of us do when we feel depressed, this is the vegetative symptom of appetite. When we feel depressed, what do? One of the things we do is what? Eat. I remember when I was in college, I call it school anyway. When I was in college and university, deadlines and exams was very stressful. And how I dealt with it, I ate ice cream. That worked for me so good, that helped me to cope and get back to normal. Until it worked for me. I did it so many times, I started calling ice cream as antidepressants. And it was a joke amongst us in the family. Let's have some antidepressants. We go get ice cream. But now I'm not really good friends with ice cream. Yeah. So what do? We eat. But the difference is, if there's a significant change in appetite, that's what makes a difference. Significant change in appetite for a long period of time. Right? Crunch times, sometimes we do need to have the sugar, we need to have the coffee or something to help us cope, right? But that's totally okay. But if we don't get out of it and we want to continue eat to feel better, then there's maybe something going on there we need to look at. So a significant change in appetite or significant change in weight, right? So if you gained 10 kilos over a very short period of time, maybe there's something going on there we need to look at. So it's not like you're just getting fat. I mean, that's very common. People, especially married people, like, why are you getting so fat? What's going on? It's like, I don't know, my appetite, I guess my appetite. Now you're so beautiful, you're opening my appetite. And there's something else happening behind them, like the sister said. They don't know. There's something's happening, but internally the mind and the brain is trying to cope in its best way to know how. So now the stress response, that's another vegetative symptom. So activation of the stress response, it activates, this is called as SNS system, which is the sympathetic nervous system, SNS. So the overactivation of the SNS is a problem. So the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, what it does, it releases neurotransmitters in the brain, hormones in the brain, to help us deal with a stressful event. It kicks in adrenaline and also norepinephrine. These are 2 names that I would like you to keep in mind for now, and be talking more about these guys. Even though they're not here, it's not considered ghaiba or backbiting, right? We're just going to talk about these 2. These are neurotransmitters, but sometimes they act, especially the norepinephrine, acts as a hormone as well. So it can be both. And the fact that this, how it happens in the brain, if you read about it, it's just fascinating. Subhanallah, it just shows you the power and the magnificent creator behind it. Subhanallah, it's very powerful stuff to learn about. So when SNS is activated, it actually is trying to protect us. It's protecting us when we think, I might die. So when we are in danger for our lives, SNS is activated, and it really what it does, in the brain, it shuts off everything that your body needs, and it only tells the body all the things that it needs to do to run for safety. Right? Whatever the case might be, it will shut off everything and just tell you, run for safety. Because you're thinking, I might die. This is good. This is the function of SNS in a normal situation. When it's not good, SNS is activated when we think, my phone battery might die. And you find this person fanatically running across the room. Where is the charger? I put it here. And they're like so angry and so expressive that's just like their life is ending. But they're dying because it's the battery that is dying, but they're acting as if the whole world is ending. I put it, why did you move it? And he starts to curse people around him. They start, being very rude to them. If you have someone like that in your family or your neighbor like that, they're not necessarily a bad person. They're just going through the stress responses a bit activated at the wrong time. And then these are the reasons why we say, even Muslims, even good believers, even imams and scholars, they may experience these things because it's beyond their control. And it's totally okay if they are experiencing these things because there's something that needs to be addressed by the professionals. So it's really not good also when it's activated like that 24/7. You're driving in the car, somebody cuts them over. Oh, what are you doing? You're screaming at people in the car. They cannot hear you, but they're still screaming, right? They're honking at them. Huh? Anybody? So what they do is they don't step on your toe. They step all over you, in a sense. So they go, because to them they feel that they are being threatened, just because they didn't find that wire to charge their phone. So I want you to think about that, because that is the behavior that they are doing, and it's all coming from the brain. So such symptoms tell us that there is a huge battle inside a person who is going through depression. The mind and the body is going back and forth, and the mind is controlling the body. So the mind is giving the signals to the body to act a certain way, is for a reason. So if this is the human being, we're made of what? We're made of mind, body, heart, and spirit. So when we tell someone to toughen it up, strengthen your Iman, put your trust in Allah, the mind is saying, what are you talking about? My phone battery was dying. What does this have to do with Iman? So the mind is telling different things, what you're telling the other person. So they have their own reasons of why they behave that way. To them it makes total sense. To them, it's normal to think that way. How come you're not acting the same way I do when your phone battery is about to die? So now we talk about the rhythmic pattern. So that's another thing that is telling us depression is related to biological. There's some biological aspect of it. Some people feel depressed when there's a heavy storm. When there's a very, very strong storm outside, or if you're in a different country, or you come from like in the U.S., many people, in San Diego it's nice and sunny, and when it comes to the gloomy part, and when the clouds starts to collect, and then the rainy season starts to come, people still feel depressed. They hardly get out of their homes. So this is a cyclical pattern around weather conditions, or around school time. You're pushing your child to go to school. What's wrong with you? How come you don't like school? We're paying so much for this school. It's one of the best schools in town, and blah, 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 blah. But the kid is like, okay. Let's go buy the stuff for the school. Okay. How come you're not so excited? I am excited. But you're just not seeing it. But that's a cycle that they go through, either at the time of school, time of exams. Some people get depressed in Ramadan. Some people get depressed in Eid. I have a theory about this. Maybe some people are feeling depressed around Eid, maybe because when they were kids, they saw how animals are slaughtered in how some people slaughter animals here. I mean, I feel sorry for some animals that I saw they're being slaughtered. I mean, I think the goat and the cow, they have a heart attack before they're being slaughtered. They're tied and ups and downs, and there's like, the cow is like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I can share with you my experience when I first saw how goats are being slaughtered. We were in a community, we slaughtered that day about 40 goats. Not one goat made a sound. Not one goat said, what did they say? Bah. Not one of them. They were carried to the slaughter. We slaughtered them quietly. Next to us, two Mexican guys, I'll never forget that. Two Mexican guys holding the same kind of goats we had, and they were trying to slaughter them, and we couldn't block the noise and the screaming of the goats. They're just screaming, and the two Mexican guys are struggling. How do you want to cut them? And they're seeing us bringing one goat after another, and not one goat is like, guys, how do you do this? They're like really, really exhausted just from two goats. We had 40. And that's when we told them, this is Islam, we say Bismillah, we take care of the animals and all that. The animal was beautiful. Even going to slaughterhouse, they were really happy and very enjoying their journey to that. But compared to the two Mexican guys. So maybe some children got exposed to this, to an early traumatized experience. They saw the animal being slaughtered so brutally, and maybe they connected that to the time of Eid. I don't know, that's a possibility. So we need to be careful. One school here, I heard that they raised a goat in the school, and the children were really happy about it, and they just slaughtered the goats. The children were traumatized. And I wouldn't be surprised if the children became adults and they're like, you know what, forget about Eid. I have very bad feelings. I have bad vibes about Eid. I wouldn't be surprised if they grew like that. But that's what we need to be mindful, especially with our children. We need to see what's happening and how that might impact their lives in the future, right? We need to be mindful of that. But this is, again, just a hypothesis about Eid. I don't know for sure. But that's what we do with Word, right? That's why we want to do these researchers, and we need to do these research, and we understand from our community, from our Muslims, what is really happening with us, so we can help specifically to the Muslim Ummah. So this is, the rhythmic pattern is called seasonal affect disorder, which is SADS. So with that said, telling someone to toughen it up because they're feeling down, telling them to feel, to have more Iman, to do that, it doesn't really do much for them. So I would say, treat it as if it's a disease, as if you heard that they just got cancer, or they just got diagnosed with diabetes or something like that. That would resonate with them much better. That would help them much better. It wouldn't, they may be already having guilt, right? And you tell them, oh, come on, strengthen your Iman. It's like, oh, my Iman is weak. Oh, that's maybe why. And they have more guilt. Oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. So you're not helping them, really, by telling them that. It's a good reminder, but not the good time. Not a good time. Okay, so biological stuff. So we're talking here about the brain. So now we finished the psychological, now we talk about the biological. So the brain is, we're going to talk about two parts of the brain. The chemistry of the brain and the structure of the brain. The parts of the brain, right? So the chemistry of the brain. What are the chemistry of the brain? They're called neurotransmitters. There are hormones as well. But I want to talk about neurotransmitters. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. We talked about this guy before. Oxytocin, it's when it increases. When it increases, it's when we have a social connection. See, many people love Facebook, not because of Facebook, it's because what Facebook does to us. We feel socially connected. Oxytocin is high. We feel pleasure. It increases oxytocin. Take Facebook away, take the phone away for a few days, you tell me how you feel. That means oxytocin is really low. And we no longer have this human interaction as much as we have computer interactions. So dopamine, on the other hand, it's a substance, it's a neurotransmitter that is it's activated when we are getting rewards, like ice cream. Finish this and get the ice cream. Oh, really? Yeah, cool. So the anticipation of the reward kicks in the dopamine. And the dopamine gives us excitement, pleasure, and all that stuff. That's what I talked about in my last talk last week about pornography, is people maybe not doing pornography for the sake of pornography, but it's actually what it's giving them, the dopamine that is helping them to feel that pleasure, that spike. Dopamine comes really fast and drops very fast. Oxytocin takes time to build up and takes time to drop. Same thing for serotonin. Serotonin is a pleasure of security. When you feel secure, you have serotonin. When you feel threatened, the serotonin drops. And serotonin drops, you also feel low and sad and depressed. So for example, a very common example that I use a lot in my talks is when we feel hungry. Some people, when they feel hungry, they feel angry, frustrated, irritated. That's because maybe somewhere in their lives they realize that there's a connection between feeling hungry and dying, because hunger is a sign of, if you don't eat, you die, right? Somehow they made that strong connection. So like, I need to eat. So they act as if that guy, the phone battery is running out or dying. So they act very aggressively. So I call this state, being hungry and angry, I call it hangry. So you're hangry. So you're hungry and angry at the same time. So therefore, in that state, the hangry state, your serotonin is low. If I were to give that person not a meal, but a dose of serotonin, it's like, you know what? I'm cool. Take your time. All of these things is very true that we can adjust with medication. But here's the beauty of therapy and psychology, is we train the people to regulate this. And that goes along further than any medication. At Relationary, we don't really, we're not really big fans of medication, but there are some cases that need medication, that would need to take medication as the therapy continues. We need to give some kind of medication to help. Norepinephrine, the stress regulator. Under stress, you release norepinephrine. That's why so many people, they're like, oh, I love being in a stressful environment. Because they're dependent on norepinephrine to make them feel good. If you take them out of the if you take them out of the stressful environment, they feel low. It's like, oh, so dull. I don't know what to do now. I feel so unpleasant. Oh, so stupid job. I just sit on the couch. I sit on a chair doing nothing. I used to run around, but you're making more money. No, I don't like it. So they're struggling because there's some imbalanceness in the brain. Remember this slide, right? Talked about this earlier. Anhedonia, grief, guilt, and all that stuff. I'm going to connect this to chemicals right now. So anhedonia comes from lack of dopamine. You don't have dopamine, you experience anhedonia. You get a rush of dopamine, you remove anhedonia, you start to feel pleasure. That's applicable, or that's very relatable to all the behaviors that we do that don't make sense to us, and it's still a sin in many of them, but it really gives us that dopamine to make us feel pleasure. Grief and guilt related to serotonin. So serotonin, the absence of serotonin causes the grief and causes the guilt, and vice versa. Unless we know how to balance this internally within ourselves and know the skills on how to do that, we will continue to feel that way, and that will lead us or continue us to be in depression. Self-harming is substance P. That's another substance that I didn't mention before, but it's another thing, it's another chemical in the brain that it gives us pleasure, not pleasure, but it really helps us to cope with pain. But if somebody is going through depression, what they do is they cut themselves, or they beat themselves up, or they cut their stomachs, or whatever, the legs, or whatever the case. They feel pain, and that pain reduces substance P. Substance P tells the brain, it's okay, now it's fine. And they're like, oh, great release. Great release. So check on your children. Take them swimming in small bathing suits and check their bodies. Maybe they're doing something you don't know. It's really good to do that, but don't make it so intentional. You'd be surprised with things that we find. It's sad, but it's possible to fix. So you need to be mindful of these things. So they use self-harm to release that dull feeling, and they feel a little bit of pleasure. They feel a little bit of excitement in their brain. Believe it or not, that's happening in many, many homes. Sadly to say. Psychomotor, we talked about that, being unable to walk and go around and walk around. What's happening there is the norepinephrine is not enough. You see, you get someone who's depressed, and you give them a dosage of norepinephrine, they'll be all over the place. Like, yeah, let's go this, let's go camping, let's go here, let's go shopping, let's go visit friends or visit family. They're very active. Just giving them a norepinephrine. And you take out the norepinephrine, they're back to depression. That's why therapy works. It just takes time. Therapy works, takes time. Medicine works, but you're dependent on it. It happens really quickly. The response happens quicker than therapy, that's for sure. But you stop it, and then it comes back again. But therapy, you develop that skill to be able to help you with it. So if you have the serotonin, the lack of serotonin can also develop OCD. OCD, obsessive compulsiveness. So this is an idea of a person who may be having OCD, making wudu. This is my impression. 1. Oh, not good. Let me do it again. 2. And they go like this forever. 3. And then they start with the mouth. And they go that forever. Maybe they did it right, and maybe they did not do it right. And that's OCD, the obsessive compulsive disorder. Some brothers I've noticed in the salah, they make takbir. I don't know why. Maybe there's some opinion in fiqh, but I really don't know. You can correct me on that. When they go, they focus like this. They stand like that. Allah. And then just start again. Allah. And they start again. It's like, what's going on, brother? Just say Allahu Akbar and let's get moving. But no, to them it has to be perfect. But I'm not going to say that, of course, right? I'm very mindful of that. They could be suffering from or experiencing OCD. OCD varies between us, but the extreme form of OCD is when it comes to crippling. So someone with serious OCD is also maybe something depression happening there as well. So let me get that pointer again. Okay. So the structure of the brain. This is your brain. There are 2 parts of the brain that I want to talk about today. The frontal cortex and the limbic system. Limbic system. There's a part in the limbic system. It's called, there is the amygdala and there is the hippocampus that really stores memory. And memory, subhanAllah, the way it's stored, it's not just the visual. It's not like I'm not just storing memory of who's sitting in the front row and who's sitting in the back and how many people are here and how many people are not and so forth. It's actually the memory is also storing how I feel. I'm storing right now the experience, how I'm experiencing it with you. Good experience, alhamdulillah. So that is being stored in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus, what it does, it collects the memory from the brain and it brings it to our visualization inside our brain to see it. So the main parts that we have is the limbic system, where the emotions, it really controls the emotions. So the area that cleans our body from urine is called kidneys, right? The body part that we have that cleanses the blood from urine is called kidneys, right? The liver does what? Cleanse the blood. Toxins, right? So the limbic system is part of the brain that we hardly ever talk about the brains and the parts of the brains, but the limbic system is the part that handles emotions. All the the neurotransmitters that I mentioned before and hormones, it goes around that area. And there are some neurotransmitters also in the brain, in the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is really what helps us decide to make payments for our bills, to pay our bills on time, to pay our taxes. They brought taxes back, right? Yeah. I thought it was gone, but I guess not. So that's the the frontal cortex is telling us to pay these bills. The emotions is regulated by the limbic system. So the neurotransmitters really regulates emotions with behavior. If that's not regulated, then we would behave unexpectedly, or something that is kind of conventional in a sense. So these are the two parts of the brains, and where the activities of the chemicals are happening between the limbic system and the frontal cortex, the emotions and the behavior. So let's say, after this talk today, in about half an hour, let's say that you get out the door, and because you need to eat, either you're hungry or you're hangry, so don't know. And outside the door, you see a line charged at you. A line is going, maybe not Osama, maybe the father of Osama, I don't know, that is going and charging at you. What do you do? What will you do? Shut the door. Well, whatever you do, I can tell you that all of us, we will do the same thing. We will activate the stress response. Unconsciously, we will activate that. So that stress response, the SNS, will be activated. So therefore, like, you know what? There goes lunch. I'm not going to have lunch. And you know what? I don't know what to do. I'm freezing. I don't know should I run? Should I run this way? Should I run that way? And you're like, your thinking is slow. The whole thing is running in slow motion like you see it in movies. That's very true, actually. When we're facing danger, we tend to like freeze. It's like, what's going on here? And then you start thinking, uh-oh, I might die. I might die now. I'm in danger. And then when you start thinking that way, and you feel that you're in danger, the feel of regret, the feel of guilt. Oh, I shouldn't have had that fight with my spouse on the way to this talk. The last thing I spoke to my mom this morning, I told her I'll talk to you in a week. I was so upset with her. So the guilt, the fear, the grief, and all that. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know this was my last moment. All these thoughts are going so quickly in our mind. And the freeze, that's the psychomotor I spoke about. When we're under attack, when our life is in danger, is really we think slow, we move slow, we freeze for a little bit. And when it comes down to feed, who wants to eat at that moment? You lose your appetite. You're like, I don't care right now. I just want to make sure that I'm safe. Now, why am I saying this? So how do we experience depression? Well, we sit down and we're thinking, refugees, that guy, the idiot I showed his picture earlier, and the other idiot in the Kremlin, they're causing a lot of traumas around the world. We think about the tragedies that are happening around the world, the kids in the refugee camps, and why there are refugees. And you start thinking about the state of the Ummah. You're just sitting down, you're not doing anything, right? And you're just thinking about the state of the Ummah. Why my child just failed the exam? What's going on? What's happening? And you're thinking about the loss of a loved one that you lost maybe last year. And all these thoughts are going in your mind. But guess what? Your body's experiencing the same thing as if you were being attacked by a lion. The SNS is activated just by these thoughts. And that's what the frontal cortex happening with the limbic system. And so that connection is quite tight. So the more SNS we experience, the higher chances to develop inflammation. Guess what? Arthritis, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, whatever pain you can think of that is caused by inflammation, that's how it gets caused. The more SNS, the more we get stressed about our phone running out of battery, the more we get stressed about the things that are really slow and low in terms of importance, but we make a big deal about it, the very likely that we feel pain. So it causes a range of So symptoms related to that it's what it does really, it dysregulates neurotransmitters and hormones and vice versa, right? So what are the contributing factors for depression? Parenting. So how we were children and what our parents did when we were children has a big factor, serious factor on why or how we feel depression. Or us towards our children. You know, this is based on a wide research. It's a wide research that they found that showing less warmth, as in having detachment, silence treatment. How many people that you know that they treat their children, when their children misbehave, they give them the silence treatment? Silence treatment can be face to face. They're in front of you, but you don't talk to them. Or can be what? Go to your room. I don't want to see your face for the rest of the week. Right? And that increases the chances of your child to experience depression in the long term. Another thing, interparental conflicts, marriage problems. Oh, but we don't fight in front of our children. They know. They feel it. They see it between you, how you're both treating them. They already know. Children there, again, what the Prophet said what? What did the Prophet say? He said, we are born on fitrah. It's our nature to understand how our parents really feel and how we, get that love from them. That's our fitrah. We know that. So when they have these quarrels and these fights, even though they have it in the car and they walk at home, do you think they're going to walk the same way that they usually walk as if they were in good terms? No, they're going to walk, one person will go this way and the other person will go that way. And the child is like, you don't think the child is catching up? They do. They know what's happening, and that impacts your children. Not to mention if you were to fight in front of the children. This is a proactive I'm talking about. If you are a parent, this is what you need to be mindful of. You need to help your children not to go through depression. We need to make 2025 not to happen. What is 2025? 2025 predicts that depression is going to be number 2 disability problem, right? We want to avoid that, so I need your help with that. We cannot do it alone. Also, over-involvement with the child. The overprotection, excessive use of praise or blame. All of these things are considered to be as over-involvement. Over-involvement also increases the chances of children to have depression. Preconceptions. Having preconceptions of the child. If the child does something, you understood it as being lying. He behaved or she behaved in a way that's how you grew up to see when somebody behaves this way, that means they're lying. It's like, don't lie to me. I know you're lying. It's like, I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth. So this prejudging the child based on our experiences is not fair. The child didn't have that same experience as you did. So it's not fair to think that he's expressing that feeling or that facial expression or that thing that he said because of what you learned throughout your lives. You had to do that when you were 18 maybe, or you saw that from people who are adult. But this is a 7 years old child or a 15-year-old child that never experienced that. So we don't want to have this prejudging. Also, aversiveness is to give criticism. Why your hair looks like that? Why your clothes are messed up? Go fix your clothes. Go put on something nice. It's like, this is nice. This is what all my friends wear. And if the child wears what the parents want them to wear, why your clothes are not nice? No, I'm just joking. If the child, you didn't see that one coming. If the child wears what the parents want him to wear or want her to wear, what happens? Very likely that they'll be bullied, or they'll be excluded. Absolutely right. Thank you, sir. Yeah, they'll be excluded. So the serotonin drops, right? So it's all connected, behavior and chemicals. So we need to be mindful of that. Punishments, conflicts with the children also. is very important to be mindful of. I need to rush because I don't want to run out of time. Abuse is another contribution for depression. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. Making the child feel guilty. That's emotional abuse. You need to help the child how to be better, not to feel guilt. Neglecting the child. Many parents, they both have to work. They put the child with nursery. Well, guess what? What if the nursery lost, they ran out of business? Then the child needs to have another nursery. For you, it's a solution. Go find another nursery. But for the child, it's considered that teacher neglected me because he made that connection with the first teacher. Or maybe feels that my mom is neglecting me, throwing me in these little things. And boom, you get depression, anxiety, substance abuse, suicidal behavior. And why my child is on TV or on the pornography sites or on the computer for so long, he's so addicted to so many things. Why is he drinking alcohol? He's a Muslim, he's not supposed to do that. But they're trying to fix something inside them that they have dealt with for so many years. And they'll go tell him to toughen it up and strengthen his Iman. This is beyond their control. This damage happened in the past. Fixing it now, they don't even know how to fix it. Many people that we see, they don't know what's going on. And when we talk about the past, we find some problems there. So be mindful. The peak of experiencing depression is adolescence years. 12 to teens or beyond. Treatment. How can we treat depression? Positive parenting. At IPC, inshallah you'll see it soon, we're launching a positive parenting workshop. I encourage you all to do it. We're having one of the specialties. The thing about IPC, we don't only work with Muslims. We work with experts. If the expert is an atheist, and he's the best at what he does, we bring him to teach us. And that's very normal, and this is the sunnah also. Because if we don't have expertise within Islam and within the Muslim community, we need to reach out and learn. And that's what we do in IPC. So don't get turned off by the name is not a Muslim. So I encourage you to focus on the learning experience. So the talk, we have two workshops. One positive parenting and the other one is positive education. I'm not here to talk or sell it, but I just want to mention, for depression's sake, you need to have a positive parenting style. It was shown that it can reduce child depression. And this is a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means many researchers were collected in one result. And it also showed, excuse me, positive parenting can last for more than a decade. If you were to have this positive impact for your child, after, what did Sayyidina, I always get it mixed up, Sayyidina Umar or Sayyidina Ali? What was it? So Sayyidina Umar, right? Sayyidina Umar who said what? And this is what we go by in IPC. This is a model that we follow. What did Sayyidina Umar say? First 7 years of your child, play with your child. If you or someone you know in your family that has a child of 7 years old, just be mindful how much time they spend playing with the child, as opposed to how much time they tell them what to do. At 7 years old, their job is to make mistakes. The kids, not the parents, just to make sure. So that's their job. They play. What do you want them to do? Okay? So the expectation is if this starts too early for the child, their mind is not developed, so therefore they feel the guilt at a very young age. But their job is to have fun, to play. 7 years old, up to 7. After 7 years old, 7 to 14, that's when you teach them. 7 to 14, that's what Sayyidina Umar said. And after 14 to 21, befriend them. Be their friends. If you have a teenager and doesn't talk to you about their problems, that's a problem. That's a red flag. You need to have your children to be open and talk to you about anything. And if you have that, then you've done a great job with the child. And if you didn't, you can teach your child to be a better parent. Don't fall into this regretful and guilty. It's okay. The reason it's okay is because we didn't know. And that's okay. And now we're learning, and now we're trying to make this positive change into our children's lives. You're taking notes? No. That's my son, by the way, if you didn't figure that out. Also, positive parenting predicts healthy brain. The chemical and the hormones and the structure, that's all in the brain, is the development. It develops really goodly. It develops very well. Good parenting style is when some of the things that we can share with you ahead of time is monitoring. Instead of over-involving, monitor. Just know about your child's activity. What are you doing? I'm doing this. Okay. Well, who are you going with? I'm going with this person and that person. Okay. How long are you going to be? Okay. But being like with the child, a parent who goes and shadows the child wherever they go. Autonomy granting is allowing the child to learn how to be independent. That, this is some of the stuff that you will get in the workshop, inshallah, if you attend. So the depression treatment, so Iman and diabetes are distinct, are they not? Someone who increases his Iman, does that make diabetes disappear? Same thing for depression. Depression and Iman are also distinct. They're separate things. With all due respect to your opinion, brother. I come from evidence, from the facts that we've done in the researches. And it's also with all due respect with all of you who disagree with me. But I'm just sharing this with you to tell you these are two different things. And I'm more than happy to hear your opinion about it. Because we're all learning here. Because I also want to learn from your side. Iman can help cope with diabetes. There's no doubt about that. Same thing. Iman can help cope with depression, but it doesn't remove depression necessarily. It helps us cope. That's what Iman does. And that's the connection that we want to make Iman and Islam and Quran. It helps us cope with it. But it is a serious thing. So therefore, an effective way to cope is really to develop the skills that we need to deal with depression that takes care of our body, sleep well, eat well, our brain, the balance and the structure for the neurotransmitters and so forth, the heart and how we feel, right? The limbic system and the amygdala or the hippocampus stores that emotion, but somehow we always say that emotions come from the heart. But let's stick with that. It's the heart. The emotion is with the heart. And also we work with the spirit. But focusing on the spirit or blaming someone or judging someone that is not having good spirit and that's why they're not feeling good, it's not fair. It's not fair because it's very similar to diabetes. So one of the things we do is just that we don't look at the person of the, so here's when a flower doesn't bloom, fix the environment, not the flower. And that's what we focus. We look at the environment. We look at the faith, the learning, the experiences of the person, why they're feeling depression, and we work as a holistic approach, systemic approach we call it. So that's the treatment. If you go see someone, I'm not telling you we are the only ones, but I can tell you we're the first site or the first center that is geared to help Muslims. We don't, as far as I know, and I've been told this many times, and I really didn't realize it until I was told, that we have the first center or therapy center that is geared or focusing on the Muslim communities. We have individuals here and there, but this is the only center that is gathering a lot of professionals into one place. So what we do a systemic approach. But if you don't want to come, that's fine. All I ask you to do is just keep in mind to go with someone who can have a systemic approach as well. Because it's not just you have the problem. The other people around you, they need to be part of the solution as well. Okay? Engaging in psychotherapy treatment. So the psychotherapy is called CBT, EFT, PPP, a lot of abbreviations. This is like cognitive behavior therapy. This is emotional focused therapy. This is positive psychology, and there's so many of them. It's used differently for different reasons, depends on the case. But having that, it really helps to train the brain how to balance the neurotransmitters. It really helps us to behave. So we control the behavior, and the behavior helps to control the neurotransmitters. The behaviors and thoughts. So we work with the client to build the skills on how to manage the behaviors and thoughts. Train the body on healthy lifestyle. Train the heart, the emotion part to balance the emotions, and we also focus on spiritual growth. This is something that we have a niche in that we don't have anybody that does the way we do it. So, oh yeah, this is an advice. Stay away from NLP. All right? NLP is not really the way to go. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. If you want to talk more about it, after the talk, more than happy to give you some more, or you can talk to one of our clinical psychologists and they can tell you more about that. What else? So same thing, for diabetes, some cases you need medication, because early diabetes, you don't need medication, you just have a diet, a specific diet and you're okay. But for extreme levels, you need medication. The same thing for depression. You may need medication for depression, for excessive or major depression. You may need medication for that. So the treatment also, now we're talking still about the treatment for depression, is make sure it is diagnosed properly. All right? So many people, they don't diagnose it correctly. They say depression, but they don't really get to the bottom cause of what's going on deep inside. One of the things that some people look down upon is the psychodynamic approach. Psychodynamic has a big bad reputation. My mouth is not maybe a little bit dry. I get some water with that. So the psychodynamic has some bad reputation with some people, but that's why we're Muslims and we do psychodynamic from an Islamic point of view. There are many scholars in Islam, in the psychology, into the psychodynamic that are really one of the people that we have in our network. So they can be very helpful to diagnose also correctly, but that's a side topic. We highly recommend you to see a clinical psychologist first. Start with a clinical psychologist. Why? Because they know the ins and outs of depression. They know how to diagnose it. They know what assessment to give you. They know how to help you diagnose it properly. Once you get that, then the clinical psychologist will give you the next steps. But here's the part that you need to focus on. From your part, you need to have commitment for yourself, for the well-being of your own, to work and continue to work with that clinical psychologist. If that clinical psychologist you didn't like, go find another clinical psychologist. But you really need to work and take this seriously, because it's treatable, it's fixable, and you will feel better. You just need to have that commitment for yourself. So what happens is, the steps are, the psychologist then may refer you to a counselor or some therapist. You don't need to continue with a clinical psychologist, or you may need to continue with a clinical psychologist. Or the clinical psychologist might refer you to a psychiatrist. What's the difference between a clinical psychologist and a psychiatrist? A psychiatrist doesn't sit with you and tell you how you feel today. They ask you, do you still have medicine? You want a refill? Yeah, if you talk about a psychiatrist, you really don't. I mean, that's what, they're not learned to do that. Even though some of them they try, but they don't have the skills as a clinical psychologist does. So the clinical psychologist addresses the problem in a much broader sense. And if you do need a psychiatrist, they will refer you to that. And they will tell you ahead of time. So this is what's happening, and this is what you need to do. And we'll try this. And if it didn't work, we'll try something else. So then the clinical psychologist, if they referred you to, they also may refer you to a marriage counselor or a marriage therapist or marriage psychotherapy for family therapy or relational psychotherapy. Also, the clinical psychologist may refer you to a career counselor to find another job instead of sitting down and feeling depressed about it. So the career counselor can help you develop and continue to grow. Or a career coach. I'm also a certified coach, but we have coaches as well that can help you. If you don't want to see a counselor, you can come and see a coach, or you can go find a coach and help you. They will help you. But start with a clinical psychologist. They will really be a good way to start, a good place to start for yourself. Work with professionals, whomever it may be. If it's a counselor or a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, whatever the case might be, you need to have that commitment towards them. So the process is you go through an intake, you do some assessments, you do the clinical psychology will do some diagnosis, and they'll give you some treatments. So these two, you might spend time going back and forth because, again, we don't have an x-ray to know exactly what's happening. So we need to go with one thing and try it. If it worked with you, then it's good, we stick to it. If it's difficult, you're not able to do it, then we change the approach. We do a different approach. Instead of CBT, some people don't like CBT. We do EFT, we do PP, we do psychodynamic if it's needed. And this may be and that's where you need to remind yourself to continue to have that commitment. You may get a referral or not, don't know, but that's the process. But you need to continue treatment after it's done. And after you get the treatment, after you feel better, you need to check in with your counselor, with your therapist, like once a month to start with, and then maybe once every 3 months, once every 6 months. Because again, as if when we learned how to walk, right? We fell and then once in a while we kind of like try to learn how to walk again so we can perfect that treatment in our lives. So this whole plan is the professionals you're working with, they usually come up with this plan with you. So what happened to Rudy? So with all that we said, and we know the story of Rudy, what happened to Rudy? He's going through all this depression. What do you think Rudy should do? I'm sorry? Go to the lion. But he's feeling depressed. He wants to throw himself off the cliff.
Take some ice cream.
Take some ice cream. No, it doesn't do that. He has a lot of ice cream. He's not enjoying it. Even if he take ice cream, he's not enjoying it. See a clinical psychologist. Good guess. Yeah, get some therapy. Get some help. And that's what Rudy did. He went and saw a clinical psychologist. Otherwise, we're kidding ourselves because Rudy is in real trouble. He is ill. He's just as ill as any diabetic person. If you have diabetes or diagnosed with diabetes, what do? You go see a doctor. Right? If you have the symptoms of diabetes, you go see a doctor. And that's exactly what it's all about. Don't shy away that you're going to see a counselor. You're not crazy. There's just imbalance in the chemicals of the brain. Just like there's imbalance in the chemicals of the insulin in the pancreas, then we need to fix that. Same thing there. There's no different in that. So the thing about Rudy, he taught himself how to adapt to changes upwards, excitement, career, opportunity, passion. He was able to adapt to that quickly. But he had problems adapting to the downwards of life. He never learned how to do that. He's all alone. And that's what therapy helps. Thank you very much. And I'm done. So please give us your feedback. Scan this. I would like to give us your feedback. And I would like to give the microphone to Brother Safwan Ibrahim here. He's presenting the International Open University. Islamic Online. The Islamic Online University. And I'll leave the microphone for him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First of all, Jazakallah khair for Brother Ammar for leading the presentation. It was really enlightening, alhamdulillah. And just take 3 minutes of your time. You might be wondering why we have IOU, Islamic Online University's logo on the poster. Firstly, we are partners with Yayasan Ta'alim for almost 4 years now, alhamdulillah. And also, we also newly partnered with Relational in IPC as well. So alhamdulillah, so we have come together to raise awareness on Islamic psychology and understanding mental health the right way from Islamic perspective. So I would like to introduce you all to Islamic psychology from IOU. We have a department solely committed to studying, researching on Islamic psychology and mental health with professionals from academic perspective. So I will invite you all to look into this program. I'll pass down the brochures. Yeah. So we have programs, 4 years degree program, 2 years diploma program, and also a 1 year certificate program in Islamic psychology. And I would recommend that. Just try the 1-year certification to take your interest further in Islamic psychology, where you will learn about Islamic psychology 101. Oops.
It's okay. It's okay.
So you'll be studying.
It's okay. It's okay.
So you'll be studying Islamic psychology 101, child psychology, and also Islamic counseling 101. And in addition to Al-Aqidah Islamic Studies programs. So inshallah, if you have any questions, further inquiry about this, the brochures have the website. You can check out the website www.iou.edu.gm. And if you have any further questions on this program, you can contact the number at the back of the brochure, or you can just WhatsApp me. By the way, my name is Safwan. I'm the Malaysian representative of IOU. So, any question I can help you, inshallah. So, Jazakallah khair for your time, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feek. Thank you very much, brother. Okay, so I would like you to take a picture of this or scan it and fill the form for feedback, because it really helps us to continuously improve. We invite you to give us, all your feedback that you can. It's also anonymous. You don't have to tell us who you are. But if you feel comfortable to tell us, we will not hold it against you, even if you didn't like what I mentioned. And if you have any questions, let me check if the question is coming in. Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, so remember the 4 rooms upstairs. If you're interested, just let us know. We will have some of our professionals to sit with you, free of charge. So today, all of it is free of charge. So no problem. So I have a question here. So the question is, how is schizophrenia related to Iman? How did I do this? So the question is, how is schizophrenia is related to Iman? Everybody knows schizophrenia? So schizophrenia is really hearing real voices of things that are in your mind. A lot of people misdiagnose it as possessed, right? It's a ghost, he's being possessed. Well, actually, what happens with schizophrenia, even though it may come across as this person is possessed and there's shaitan inside them, it's actually what they found, that there's some chemical imbalances that is triggering these voices inside them. As a matter of fact, you can see this maybe on YouTube. I really didn't look it up, but I've seen some videos where they take a cut out of the skull, and the brain is exposed like this. The patient is alive. So they are aware of everything, they're conscious, and the doctor stimulates a little bit of currents, a little bit of electricity on the brain. And it's like, oh, I'm tasting sweetness in my mouth. Oh, I'm experiencing this beautiful scenery. I don't know, I felt like this when I was looking at this, beautiful waves and all. Like, they just lying down, and they're just stimulating parts of the brain. It's like, oh, I'm hearing myself as a child when I was a kid. I'm hearing my parents telling me this. They're just stimulating the brains in a certain way, that the brain is really activated in a way that we experience things that are not around us. Schizophrenia is no different than that, but there's a lot more than that. I'm just giving you a very small synopsis of what it's about. I'm not the expert in that, but I also encourage you to talk about it with a clinical psychologist. They know a lot about that more than me, and that's a specialty also. So how is it related to Iman? It's the same thing. It's very likely. If you take the person, imam or a person who does ruqya and all that, and he's fine, and nothing happens after the ruqya, but he's still or she's still hearing these voices, then you need to take him to a clinical psychologist. It has nothing to do with Iman, right? So just wanted to touch on that. I hope I answered that question. Another question is that, are you qualified, or are you both qualified as an executive coach and counselor? Yes, I am. All the people are in relation area they are. Either we're all coaches and therapists, or therapist and clinical psychologist. Can depression lead to other mental health illnesses or issues? Yes. Grief, depression, it can cause the low self-esteem, it cause the self-harm or the suicide. All these are related to and caused by depression if it's not treated. So if you think diabetic illnesses, if you're not taking care of your insulin intake, you'll die. Well, guess what? If we're not taking care of our depression state, we might not die,
but we might kill ourselves. And that's the danger. That's the danger of depression. It's very, very serious. There's no really better way to put it. I'm sorry if I'm being very, very blunt about it. Another question, what if a person is having MD, major depression, but has a high functioning level, able to cope with the surroundings? Does it mean they are recovering, or do they just learn to act normal in public? Well, what could be happening is the SNS is active, and that's why they're functioning. But the fact that they have this functioning, maybe they're over-functioning. Maybe what's happening inside them is not at the optimal level. So the fact that they're behaving, and that's what the sister said is very, very accurate. It's really difficult for us who has it. I mean, if I have it, it's very difficult for me to say I have major depression or not. But if you have these moments of feeling low for a very long period of time, that's what you need to focus on, regardless whether you're functioning or not. Okay, I hope I answered that one. Salam, another question. Salam, is there similarities with self-sabotage and self-harm? Self-sabotage and self-harm. Why do people self-sabotage? Self-sabotage comes from low self-esteem, very likely. Self-harm comes from the guilt, and so they're different. So self-sabotage can come because of the parents, how they treat them when they're young, or their self-esteem is not as strong as they're supposed to be. How does over-involvement contribute to depression? When we are over-involved with the children, what it does, it's taking a normal development of the brain, the part of the brain where it develops normally. It's not being developed because we are interfering with the normal development. We're always telling the child what to do. Think this way, think that way. Be a school student, be this, so you can have the career of your life. You're gonna end up with a child who has a 4.0 from the university, but doesn't have joy in their life. They don't have joy in pleasure in their job, and they're just down. So that early intervention that we did, over involvement with the child, does impact how they see the world and how they, what does it mean to be successful? What do I need to do to feel the pleasure? And when they go out and do it, it's like, I did exactly what you did. I'm not getting that excitement that you told me about. So over-involvement sometimes can be very negative, and allowing the child to develop, and for the brain to develop, the structure to develop, and for the child to come up with this normal balance on its own, it's much better by being involved and engaged instead of over-engaged or over-involved. We'd be monitoring and helping the child and be there for the child. Again, the 7-7-7. So after the first 7 you play, the second 7 you teach, the third 7 is you befriend, and after that what? At the age of 21, you be their coach. You be their coach as a parent. Coach your child. We do offer also some coaching classes. You can learn how to coach. You don't have to be a certified coach to help your family member. So that's another thing that you can help your family members and yourselves. Does our diet and physical activity, i.e. exercise, influence the likelihood of one developing depression? It does contribute, but it's not a triggering point. Most of the triggering points that I'm familiar with is not triggered because of the diet. It's maybe if we are dependent on that type of food, or if we're dependent on that exercise, it's giving us that stimulation from the dopamine, right? Or maybe we eat a meal that we're having with social gathering and all that. So we get that dependence on that meal is making us feel, as opposed to the actual nutritions of the meal. So that is likely to cause depression more than the nutritions or lack of nutritions. But there's no doubt there are some, the Prophet ﷺ said that talbina, is it, right? I think it's talbina. He said it takes some of the sadness. So yes, so there are some food that we can eat to ease the depression. But I'm not familiar with, you eat something and it causes depression. Something that is halal, right? I'm not talking about cocaine and stuff here. So something that you would take in your body. So the cocaine is not going to cause you depressed, actually, if you're on the drugs, or anybody you know that is drugs. It's not the drugs that is making them depressed. It's the lack of drugs is what's making them depressed. And that's why they need to have more of it. So be mindful of that. They're not necessarily bad people, but they fell into a black hole and they found that this is the only way out. We just need to reach out and help them out. Another question. How do you see a person who does a lot of ibadah but still feel depressed, like I mentioned earlier? How to cope? As I mentioned, these are two separate things. If somebody is having this depression, seek help. Has nothing to do with your ibadah. You are a very good person. You're a good Muslim. Even if, I talked the same thing the last week. Even if you are watching pornography 24/7, you're not a bad Muslim. You need to get off this habit and find another way to get pleasure out of this dopamine, because you're not really hooked on pornography per se. I said the smokers also, people who smoke, they're getting dopamine rush. It's not the smoking, it's not the nicotine as much as it is the dopamine. So you name it, all these bad behaviors, and I'm going to say it also, masturbation. People might do it not because they're bad people, it just gives them that high. That, preparation for that act is going to give them that high. And I've worked with couples who are having these kind of problems. They're married, but they're having these problems within them. We found that one of them, at least, was very, very depressed. So it's not about how good you are of a Muslim if you're having any of these acts. It's that you are experiencing some illnesses, psychological illnesses, that we can help you with, or some other therapy centers can help you with. Okay, I don't feel refreshed when waking up. Oh, I don't feel refreshed when I wake up in the morning. Body aches, uncomfortable. I'm 60, so I assumed it is due to my age. Am I right? It's not about the pain, it's also pain and also the feel of exhaustion. If you feel exhausted when you get up, you don't feel rested, maybe something to look at. But if there's some inflammation, so the pain could suggest that there's some inflammation there. So that inflammation could be is caused also from depression, from an old depression that we need to look into. And believe it or not, and subhanAllah, when we talk about depression, when we talk about self-esteem, when we help people with these things, subhanAllah, I've had youth who left Islam, totally left Islam. I didn't say anything about Islam in the sessions. And this is very common. I mean, we focus on the well-being of the person. The person now is praying 5 prayers a day. And he or she are happy as happy can be. So these bad behaviors that we know about ourselves that we do, it not necessarily means that I'm a bad person. Is that maybe we're experiencing this depression state in our lives. If you're waking up with aches, maybe something to look at. Maybe there's some depression caused from an old time, and that is causing this inflammation in your body. The last question: if one has no pleasure in only one aspect of life, as of work, for example, is that considered as depression? No, it means that maybe you want to change your job. It could mean that maybe you want to change your job, but it's not really a black and white answer. I mean, this is really the quick answer. But if I really wanted to give you the right answer, is that you really need to understand what about the job that you're not happy about. Maybe what's happening is what Rudy is going through, or what we went through. Maybe you had some aspirations in the past, and this job is not where you want it to be. It's not giving you that excitement. But if that's the case, then maybe there is some kind of depression or residue of depression that we need to look at. So I hope I helped with my answers, and I hope you find my talk today helpful. And with that, I just want to give the last chance if anybody will have a question. There's a sister that wants to have a question. Yes, sister.
Can you explain, please, expand on your comments on NLP, please?
I can talk about that after the talk, inshallah, because it's already over time. I will talk, because that's out of the scope of the talk. Yes, brother?
How do you tie in anxiety with depression?
Anxiety and depression, very interesting. Anxiety comes, I mean, just from what I mentioned here. I don't want to really go, because there's a lot to share. Honestly, this is a day worth of stuff that I need to share with you to get really to the bottom of it. But the quick answer to anxiety is very likely, or the common place that it triggers is from parenting, from childhood. Something that is in the past that is making us feel insecure. And this insecurity is reducing the serotonin. It's not feeling secure, oxytocin. So oxytocin is dropped, we don't feel secure, and therefore we feel low. We don't have this psychomotor, it's not active. And then there's the feel of low, and then we would need to kind of feel high, so we do some behaviors or some kind of things to make up for the lack of oxytocin. So anxiety can cause depression, and depression can cause anxiety. So it's both ways. As I mentioned earlier, one of the common reasons of why people get into anxiety is childhood, during the time of childhood, or maybe some kind of experiences that they experience as adults. It could be trauma, it could be sadness, it could be a lot of things that could cause this anxiety. Experiences with sometimes people have anxiety with making friends. Like, oh, I feel so anxious. I don't want to, if I reach out, maybe they don't like me. Maybe I'll be harmed. Might be very disrespectful to them. But actually, what's happening is what's inside their mind is because maybe they were dressed funny when they were young, and they were trying to make friends, and their mom or their dad telling them, "That's why you're not making friends. Look at you. Who wants to be your friend with you dressed like that?" And that stuck with them, and that's making them feel like they're never, no matter what they dress like, that anxiety is making them feel like they don't want to becoming friends with anybody. So there's a lot of things could be going on, but that's one area. So I hope that kind of gave you an idea on that. Any other thoughts or questions? Going once? Twice? اوكي جزاكم الله خير سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك السلام عليكم ورحمه الله